Assalamu alaikum and hello to my non-Muslim viewers. Today I'm going to be talking or reviewing this book, which is Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. A devout Muslim encounters Christianity by Nabeel Qureshi. And this is the 2016 version, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this is the 2016 version. So basically, some people have been asking me to refute or review Nabeel Qureshi's book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. So I went to Barnes and Noble and I bought Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. And I read it. It took me 2 or 3 days, but I read the entire thing. There's a lot of inaccuracies, or there's a lot of problems with this book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. There's a lot of inconsistencies. There's a lot of sloppy research when it comes to not only Islam but Christianity as well. There's a lot of appeal to emotion arguments, and there's a lot of fallacious reasoning, a lot of fallacious arguments in this book. Nabeel Qureshi commits the fallacy of appeal to emotion and the fallacy of the two-co fallacy, which is the U2 fallacy. So Nabeel Qureshi commits a lot of fallacious arguments and things like that in this book. And there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of inconsistencies. There's a lot of weak arguments, and there's a lot of sloppy research done. When he's talking about Christianity and Islam in this book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. That's not to say that there's nothing good in this book. This book is actually, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus is actually it's actually an entertaining book. And another good thing Nabeel Qureshi does is he gives references. So he'll say there's the Quranic verse, there's the Sahih Bukhari reference, and he'll get into page numbers of. He'll say, Ibn Asad, page 515 or whatever. So he'll quote references in this book. He won't just say Muhammad said this or the Quran said this. No, he actually provides references for the book. And he actually gives I like how the pages are I don't know if you can see it, but he actually gives these little I don't know what you call these, but he gives a summary of main summary of what the page is talking about in this little bubble here, whatever you call it. So those are the two good things about Nabeel Qureshi's book. It's actually an entertaining book. It's not like a scholarly monograph or some kind of academic monograph. It's actually an entertaining and personal book. So that's the good thing about this book. But I can't, as a Muslim, I can't take it seriously because there's too many problems with this book. And he gets a lot of facts wrong about not only about Islam, but he gets a lot of facts wrong about Christianity as well. But that's what these Christian apologists do. They just make up stuff and they lie about a lot of stuff. And he's not the only one. He's not the only Christian. He's not the only dishonest Christian out there. There are a lot of these hacks like James White and a lot of these mentally unstable quacks like David Wood, who also are liars and make up stuff and stuff like that. But anyways, this book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus, made it to the New York Times bestseller. And a lot of people have been reading this book. A lot of Christians have been reading it, and this book has been translated into I think 12 different languages, or maybe even more if I'm remembering correctly. So this book is available in Urdu, Arabic, German, Italian, so this book is translated into many different languages. So this book is actually widely dispensed all over the world. So anyways, there's a lot of problems. Now Nabeel Qureshi is dead. I think a lot of people already know that on my channel. Nabeel Qureshi has passed away. So I'm not gonna talk bad about him, because if I'm talking bad about him, I'm only hurting his family, and I don't want to do that. But I'm just attacking his book because there's a lot of inaccuracies or a lot of fallacious arguments in this book. So I'm attacking this book. I'm not attacking him as a character. I mean, he's passed away, and just let it be on that. You know. So yeah, I mean, it's sad that he passed away, but at the same time, he would, I'm not the only one who says this. Even there are other Christians who say that he wasn't an honest person during his ministry, and this is a fact. This isn't just opinion. This isn't just my, this isn't just Ehteshaam Gulam's opinion. This is other Christians like Seth Dunn have said that Nabeel Qureshi was dishonest, and other Muslims have also said that he's dishonest and things like that. And a lot of people have questioned his Muslim background. For example, even in this book, for example, I'll give you one example. In the praise of this book, in the beginning of this book, there's some Christian authors and Christian scholars who are praising this book. So one person by the name of Mark Gabriel, who was one of those fake apostates from Islam. But anyways, he says that Nabeel Qureshi was a sincere young Ahmadiyya man. So even these Christian authors and scholars, I think Mark Gabriel was an author of some books on Christianity and Islam, if I'm remembering correctly. But anyways, even Mark Gabriel, who's a Christian, not an atheist or a Muslim, says that Nabeel was a young Ahmadiyya man. So Nabeel Qureshi was an Ahmadiyya, you see. So even these Christians are admitting he's an Ahmadiyya. He wasn't a Sunni Muslim or Orthodox Muslim. So this became a big controversy when he became bigger. A lot of Muslims and some Christians like Seth Dunn. Seth Dunn actually wrote a piece in his website, Pulpit and Pen, saying that Nabeel Qureshi was dishonest in his conversion story and stuff like that. And I'll post the link below. And I know David Wood has responded to that article. I know that, but anyways, so Seth Dunn had some good points. He was bringing up some good points about questioning Nabeel Qureshi's conversion from Ahmadiyya Islam to Christianity. So I'll just let the reader read that article and come to their own conclusions. I'm not going to get into that article here, but anyways, Nabeel Qureshi was he wasn't an honest person when it came to his conversion, and this is a fact. I'm not trying to slander him or anything. It's just a lot of people were saying he was an Ahmadiyya. Even Christians were saying he was an Ahmadiyya, which aren't considered Muslims by Orthodox Muslims, and then he was trying to showboat, or he's trying to showcase that he was an Orthodox apostate from Islam. And the reason why he was desperately trying to convince his apostasy from Islam, Orthodox Islam, even though he was an Ahmadiyya, is because he wanted to do the Bart Ehrman approach. The Bart Ehrman approach is anybody who leaves a religion and then starts critiquing that religion, they're considered more of an expert on that religion, because the thinking goes, or the argument goes, that no one can dissect the religion better than someone who grew up in the religion. You see, so Nabeel Qureshi wants to be the Christian version of Bart Ehrman, I guess. That's what I see in his ministry, in his stories, in his books, in his sermons and lectures, and his DVD teaching lessons and all that. So that's the thing. But the thing is, Nabeel Qureshi was not an honest person. I mean, that's a fact. At least when it came to his conversion and when it came to his arguments about Islam. But anyway, so let's get into this book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. Now, Nabeel Qureshi states that there's a lot of acknowledgments he gives in this book. And he acknowledges a lot of people. He acknowledges people like Lee Strobel, Dan Wallace, Gary Habermas, Josh McDowell, etc., all Michael Cohen, all conservative Christians and stuff like that. But the person who really, converted, the person who's really mentioned in this book, and the person who had a big hand in converting Nabeel Qureshi was a man named David Wood. So I think that if it wasn't for David Wood, I don't think Nabeel Qureshi would have became a Christian. I don't think so, because David Wood is mentioned a lot in this book. I think he's like the second main character in this book besides Nabeel Qureshi. So he, in the acknowledgments he says, another whose impact extends far beyond his contribution is David Wood. So, and then he writes, I am internally indebted to him for his faithful fulfillment of the call to reach out to a young, zealous Muslim despite all the odds. So David Wood was a big influence on Nabeel Qureshi. And another surprising thing is that another place in this book, I don't have the page number, but anyways, another thing in this book is that Nabeel Qureshi says that his own mom said to hang out with David Wood or be close to David Wood. Well, the problem with that is David Wood has a history of mental instability and mental problems. I mean, that's no secret at this point. David Wood has a history of, he's been institutionalized. He has a history of mental problems and mental illness, and that's no secret. Even he'll admit that. He'll say that, when he was young, he tried to kill his father with a hammer, and his mom put him in a mental hospital. So, this is really the best example. Someone like that is going to have lifelong mental problems. It doesn't matter if they're Christian or whether they did that in their past, whatever. That doesn't matter. That kind of mental problem is going to last forever. It's going to last, a lifetime. I certainly don't want my kids to kill me with a hammer if I get kids. Is David Wood really the best example you really want to follow and stuff like that? I don't know, at least not, in my opinion. I don't think he's all there mentally. He's not the only Christian apologist that I've had that I can see like some that has like severe mental problems. Other Christian apologists like James White and all those others. They're very strange. They have like very strange attitudes when it comes to Muslims and Islam and things like that. Like James White hangs out with kids at least 40 years or 35 years younger than him. He debates like college kids, and like real scholars like Bart Ehrman don't take James White seriously. And I'm going to post that video below and stuff like that. So, and this is kind of the problem with, when I read this book, I can easily see the influences of Nabeel Qureshi. His influence was David Wood, and, it was sociopaths like David Wood and stuff like that. It wasn't based on any kind of logic and reasoning or any kind of evidence or anything like that. It was just based on, these appeal to emotion arguments and, these misleading arguments by David Wood against Islam and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and things like that. And there were a lot of fallacious arguments he was using against Islam, and he was using a lot of fallacious arguments for Christianity in this book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. So, and that's just, that's just my impressions of this book and stuff like that. Then he says that, in the back of this book, he says, he had friendships, investigations, and supernatural dreams along the way. So basically, a lot of these apostates from Islam, there are two kinds of apostates from Islam. The first is the dishonest or the lying Christian apostate from Islam. The lying Christian apostate. The lying Christian apostate from Islam will make up stories saying that, they left their family or they had dreams of Jesus, and, which is impossible to prove. And then they say that, they studied Islam, the Quran, the Hadith, and stuff like that, and they left Islam because they didn't agree with it or like it or whatever. Or they studied the life of Muhammad and then they left and stuff like that. But a lot of these, a lot of these stories, a lot of the people who are saying these stories are these Christian converts like Mark Gabriel, Nabeel Qureshi, Abdul Moray, etc., etc. A lot of them have been caught lying or making up stuff, or not doing proper investigation of the Christian sources or the Islamic sources that they cite in testimonies and stuff like that. So these Christian converts to Islam, like 99.99% of them are dishonest anyways. They're, a lot of people, not only Muslims, but a lot of like atheists and older Christians have called them out for being dishonest. Like Ergon Cantor is another dishonest apostate from Islam and stuff like that. The second class of critics of Islam would be the atheist copycat critics of Islam. These would be people like Abdullah Samir and Warwick, etc., etc. So these are ex-Muslims or Muslims who have left Islam, who are atheist or agnostic or whatever, or like foreign Qureshi, like Hindus, or so they go into bizarre areas of religion. But anyways, these would be a lot of these apostates from Islam would be ex-Muslims who convert to atheism, agnosticism, or in some cases, like Farhan Qureshi's case, they jump around till they follow Hinduism or Buddhism or whatever. And then so these would be the copycat atheists or agnostic or etc. critics of Islam, where they plagiarize or they copy other arguments. They copy or plagiarize off other critics of Islam, and then they spit those arguments back out, and they say, yeah, that's why I left Islam, because X, Y, Z, because Prophet Muhammad did blah 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 blah, or I don't like the concept of hell and stuff like that. All these arguments, of course, were just plagiarized off other critics of Islam, like Orientalists, other Christian critics of Islam and stuff like that. So you have two types of apostates from Islam: the dishonest Christian apostate and the copycat atheist, agnostic, etc. Critic of Islam. So basically, there are two types of apostates: the dishonest ones and the copycat ones. So you're always gonna. So those are the two kinds of apostates you're dealing with when you're getting into these ex-Muslim areas and things like that. But anyways, getting back to this book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus, there's a lot of problems with Nabeel Qureshi's methodology and things like that. For example, nowhere in this book does Nabeel Qureshi have any kind of, there's no Muslim responses to this book, to any of the arguments he brings forth against Islam or the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. I'll give you an example. He talks about on page he talks about how on page 218 of this book, he says that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, allegedly tried to commit suicide. So according to him, and I'm quoting his book right here, he says, I was shocked, and I'm reading from his book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. I'm not quoting something else, but anyways, he says, I was shocked. Was Sahih Bukhari really saying Muhammad contemplated suicide? This is found on page 218 of his book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. Now, he doesn't give any, there's no Muslim responses to this argument in his book. He just says Prophet Muhammad tried to commit suicide. And this is found in Sahih Bukhari. That's it. He doesn't give any kind of Muslim responses. There's no, but Shabir Ali argues this, or Sami Zaatari, or there's no Muslim apologist response to this. And why would he allow Muslims to respond? Why would he put any kind of Muslim argument in his book? And the reason why is because it doesn't fit his agenda, right? He wants to point the finger at Islam. He wants to say, look, there's some ridiculous hadith, or there's some absurd hadith that, I as a Christian can't believe, or, when I was a Muslim I was shocked to hear these things and stuff like that. So, so he says that, he points the finger at Islam, but he doesn't give any kind of Muslim responses, because why would he? It doesn't fit into his agenda. It doesn't fit into what he wants to convey. He wants to demonize Islam, and the best way to demonize Islam is just give a one-sided picture, forget about, just give a one-sided argument. So, I've noticed this a lot in his book. For example, he says in other places about, the satanic verses and you know, he says that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, tortured people for money, and you know, he led an attack on unarmed Jews and stuff like that. This is all, now this is, you know, this can easily be refuted if you just gave Muslims a chance to refute. Like, if you just did any kind of proper research about what Muslims, you know, said about these stories, or what Muslims have, you know, Muslim responses to these stories. But he doesn't do that because it doesn't fit his agenda. You see, he just wants to demonize Islam. He doesn't want Muslims to respond because he knows that Muslims already responded to that, or to those arguments and stuff like that. So, let's get into the sources. So on page, this is found on page 225, where it says David Wood says that the Prophet Muhammad, you know, revealed verses from Satan, and he tortured people for money, and he led an attack on Jews, and you know, stuff like that. And then he repeats the Zainab bin Josh story, and he says that the Prophet Muhammad allegedly asked people to drink camel urine and stuff like that. So let's look at the references. This is found on, these references are on page 225. This would be, it says 86 to 93, so 86 to 93. So he cites, you know, places like, you know, Ibn Ishaq's book, you know, and he cites Sahih Bukhari, and he cites Al-Tabari, you know, and he cites, yeah, he cites like Ibn Ishaq and Al-Tabari and Ibn Sa'd, Al-Kitab al-Tabakat and stuff like that. Now we have to, now in order to refute these arguments, you know, it's very easy. First of all, what is he citing? He's citing Ibn Ishaq. So let's get into Ibn Ishaq and Ibn Sa'd and Al-Tabari, because he cites that a lot, and he cites Ibn Ishaq quite a bit in this book. He doesn't always cite it, but he cites it quite a bit in the book. So the first problem, and then I'll get into the Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim narrations and stuff like that. So the first reference found in the first Muslim references he cites in this book, Seeking All Time Jews, would be you know, these two sources, which would be you know, Ibn Ishaq and Al-Tabari. So, you know, so you know, are these sources reliable? Do Muslim scholars take these sources seriously? No, they don't. Muslim scholars, you know, consider these two sources to be weak sources of information about the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Ibn Ishaq has been condemned by great Islamic scholars such as Imam Malik and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal for being careless in compiling his information. So Ibn Ishaq is not a reliable biography to begin with. Al-Tabari warns people in his book, Al-Tabari Volume 1, pages 170 to 171, that his books are filled with weak and inauthentic narrations, and you know, so Al-Tabari incorporated a lot of these false or weak stories about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in his book. So, you know, and then he cites Ibn Sa'd, Al-Kitab al-Tabakat. I think he cites, Ibn Sa'd's book. You know, I'm trying to see where, I'm trying to see, like, what he cites Ibn Sa'd volume, I think it's volume 2, page 32, where he talks about the the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, allegedly allegedly killed a woman named Asma bin Marwan for writing some, you know, for instigating violence in poetry. I'm trying to find that exact Ibn Sa'd reference here. I can't find it here, but I could have sworn I saw it, where he talks about how, you know, Ibn Sa'd, I think it's Ibn Sa'd volume 2, page 32, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to find the exact reference here. But anyways, he cites that Ibn Sa'd says that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, killed a woman named Asma bin Marwan and stuff like that. But that story's been proven false. You know, that Ibn Sa'd reference that he gives is it's a weak, Ibn Sa'd is a weak source. That's what I'm trying to get at here. So he cites these weak narrations and stuff like that. Then he cites Al-Tabari, volume 6, Mawd Mecca, where it talks about the satanic verses and things like that. But the satanic verses has been disproven. Like Muslim scholars have refuted that story over and over again. For example, Ibn Hazm, Ibn Kathir, all these Muslim scholars have said that that story is weak to begin with, and things like that. And Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Ishaq even wrote an entire book saying why the satanic verses story is false. So even Ibn Ishaq is admitting that that story is false, and he wrote an entire book about it, and things like that. So basically, Nabeel Qureshi, of course, cites Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and stuff like that, and he says those are the most authentic sources. Sure, but he doesn't give any kind of historical context. He just isolates hadith without any kind of historical context. So you can do that with any scripture. I can go to the Bible, rip something out of context, throw it out there, and say, yeah, the Bible promotes rape or murder or slavery and things like that, while ignoring the context. So anybody can play that game. That game just doesn't work with Islam. It works with the Old Testament and the New Testament too. For example, I can rip something out of the New Testament, says, yeah, the New Testament says follow the Old Testament. Then I can rip things out of the Old Testament and say, yeah, you can rape, you can enslave women and stuff like that because the Old Testament allows it. So anybody can play that game. That game works both ways. But anyways, he gives no hadith commentaries. He doesn't say Sahih Bukhari says this, but Ibn Hajar, who's a commentator on Sahih Bukhari, is a Muslim scholar, and the Prophet Muhammad said follow the Muslim scholars. The Quran says follow the Prophet Muhammad, and the Prophet Muhammad said follow the Muslim scholars. And Ibn Hajar says this. He doesn't give any kind of hadith commentaries, like there's no Ibn Hajar comments on this hadith, or Imam Nawawi comments on Sahih Muslim. He doesn't give any kind of Muslim commentaries or any kind of Muslim responses in this book. So that's why I can't take this book seriously, because he doesn't respect any kind of Muslim scholarship. He just spins his own. He just spins his own interpretations about various hadith stories, Quranic verses, etc., etc. So and that's just some of the major problems with his book, where he just in a lot of ways he's copying off David Wood, and David Wood's copying off these Orientalists, or a lot of these other critics of Islam. So there's some kind of plagiarism. There's kind of a chain of transmission of plagiarism. Nabeel Qureshi is plagiarizing off David Wood. David Wood's plagiarizing off, other, Orientalists and other Christian critics of Islam, and like Robert Spencer and stuff like that. So none of his arguments against Islam are unique. It's all been refuted and stuff like that. As for this camel urine hadith, I looked into that hadith, and it's true that that's found in Sahih Bukhari. I'm not disputing that. The thing is, that references, the Prophet Muhammad is saying drink camel. He's not telling Muslims to drink camel urine. He's just giving a specific recommendation to those camel herders, and it's not a general recommendation to everybody. It's just the Prophet Muhammad was just recommending it to those people at that time. And maybe it was a miracle. Maybe that camel, maybe some kind of Allah did some kind of miracle with that camel urine, and then the shepherds drank it and they got better. So maybe that hadith is like a miracle, who knows? But read that entire hadith where the Prophet Muhammad prescribed camel urine to those people. Notice how the Prophet Muhammad didn't say Muslims should drink camel urine. No, he said those people, those specific people, and only those people drank the camel urine, and then they got better. So read the entire story. Don't just zero in on the parts you want. Don't just zero in on the parts you want to sensationalize and then ignore the entire context of the hadith. No, those camel herders drank that urine and then they got better. So read the entire story, not the parts of stories that fit your agenda and stuff like that. Now, of course, Nabeel Qureshi doesn't say he doesn't say any of this in his book. Why would he? Because it would refute his argument. So, and then there's he talks about the whole Zainab bin Josh story and the black magic and stuff like that. I've already refuted those arguments, so I'm trying to keep this video as short as possible. So in the description box below, you'll see, detailed, you'll see website, or my website and my blog where I refute those stories, those specific stories that he talks about in his book, Seeking Allah. finding Jesus and stuff like that. His arguments for Christianity are also weak. For example, he talks about he talked about how there's there's evidence for the New Testament, and there's evidence that Jesus claimed divinity and stuff like that. Well, anybody who does any kind of research on this, knows that this is false, because if you read conservative scholars like Richard Buckham, and Ben Witherington, Craig Blomberg, etc. So even these conservative Christians, not these liberals, even they admit that we don't know who wrote the Gospel of Matthew, we don't know who wrote the Gospel of Luke, we don't know who wrote 2 Peter and things like that. So how can we trust people we don't even know? The New Testament is filled with this anonymous or pseudonymous arguments, or these anonymous and pseudonymous authorship. So and these are conservative Christians saying this. This isn't anti-supernatural liberals or Barnum saying this. These are actually conservative Christians like John Drain, who's a conservative, who's an evangelical conservative. He even admits that the Gospels are anonymous, that we don't know who wrote the Gospel of John, and so these are conservative Christians. These aren't anti-supernatural liberals or whatever. Bruce Metzger, things like that. So and then there's this really good book called Raymond Brown, called An Introduction to the New Testament by Raymond Brown, where he talks about how there's like 1 Peter is considered to be anonymous or pseudonymous, and he talks about how Colossians is pseudonymous, and the book of James, or the letter of James, is also anonymous or pseudonymous, and things like that. So he cites plenty of conservative evangelical scholars who doubt the traditional authorship claims of a number of the New Testament writings. So anyways, we don't know who wrote 1 Peter or James or the Gospel of Matthew, John, Luke, etc. Later on, people put those names in there. So, but then how can we trust people we don't even know? We don't know who the sources are behind a lot of the New Testament. A lot of the New Testament books, and this is said by conservative scholars like Ben Witherington, Raymond Brown, Craig Blomberg, etc. So another good book to read would be this book, Barnum's book, Forged, where he talks about how there was forgery in the early Christian world and stuff like that, and this was actually frowned on. This wasn't encouraged. This was actually frowned on. So the point is, how can we trust the New Testament when we don't know who wrote the New Testament? We don't know who wrote the Gospel of Matthew, who wrote the Gospel of John, 1 Peter, 2 Peter, etc., etc. Again, a good book would be, this book, Forged by Barnum, and if you're saying, well, you can't use Barnum because he's an anti-liberal supernatural, or he's an anti-supernatural liberal, or whatever. So no, you can't use Barnum. Fine. Read An Introduction to the New Testament by Raymond Brown. Read John Drain. Read Richard Buckham. All these conservative scholars also say that there's anonymous or pseudonymous authorship in the New Testament books. So even these conservatives will admit it. So how the hell can we take the New Testament? How can we trust the New Testament when we don't know who wrote a majority of the New Testament? It doesn't make sense to me. Are you really telling me that Jesus crucified and Jesus was resurrected, and Jesus was the Superman of the early first century, but we don't know who wrote these documents, and we don't know who the sources are for these documents? Are you really telling me that? Are you really telling me to believe that Jesus, resurrected, he was crucified, he died for my sins, etc., etc., and all you have are these anonymous books written in the late first century without any kind of sources, without any kind of confirmed sources going back to the disciples, or any kind of confirmed authorship. I mean, is this really what you're saying? That's not the case with the Hadith. The Hadith was, preserved by the disciples of the Prophet Muhammad and by the first 3 generations. You don't have anything like the Isnad system in the New Testament. So, a lot of these New Testament books are anonymous, or you don't know who the sources are. So anyways, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus, there's a lot of issues I had with this book. There's a lot of inaccuracies and things like that. And, now they expanded this book. So, there's a new introduction by Lee Strobel, things like that. And then, and then they're trying to pimp out, or they're trying to advertise Nabeel Qureshi's second book, which is No God But One, Allah or Jesus. So anyways, so this book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus, is not, it's not an informative book. It doesn't really inform people about Christianity or Islam and things. It's not accurate. It doesn't accurately, it doesn't give any kind of accurate information about either Christianity or Islam. It's just Nabeel Qureshi's appeal to emotions. He's just using fallacious arguments like appeal to emotion arguments, or he's doing the fallacy of two coco, where it's a U2 fallacy and stuff like that. So U2 argument and things like that. And of course, Nabeel Qureshi cites from weak sources like the history of al-Tabari and the life of Muhammad. So he cites all these weak sources and things like that. So that's just of course he doesn't give any kind of he doesn't cite like authentic biographies like this book, The Sealed Nectar, or even Ehteshaam. He doesn't cite any kind of authentic biographies of the Prophet Muhammad. He just cites Ibn Ishaq and al-Tabari and things like that. So anyways, I can't take the Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus correct seriously. It's not an accurate representation of Islam or Christianity. It's not, but Nabeel Qureshi was an Ahmadi Muslim anyway, so he wasn't really like an Orthodox Sunni Muslim to begin with. And I made a whole video arguing that Ahmadis aren't Muslims, and I'll again put that in the description below. So in conclusion, this book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus, is not a good book. It's not, it's not an informative book, and it tells us very little about Islam or Christianity. It gives us a very inaccurate description, or it gives a very inaccurate portrayal of both Christianity and Islam. So I don't recommend this book to Muslims or Christians, even though it made the New York Times bestseller, and it got the Christian Book Award. So, but of course, Christians are going to promote this. They're going to heavily promote this book, and they're going to heavily advertise this book now that Nabeel Qureshi is dead. So they're coming up with I think they already came out with a second edition of the book, where it has more content and things like that. So, but anyways, it's not, this isn't an informative book. I didn't learn anything about Christianity, and I didn't get any kind of accurate, arguments against Islam, or I didn't get any kind of intellectual arguments against Islam. It's all, fallacious arguments against Islam and stuff like that. This book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. So, in conclusion, I don't recommend this book to Christians or Muslims. It's an entertaining book. Don't get me wrong. It's actually an entertaining book. But I can't take it seriously. As a Muslim, I can't take it seriously. And Christians shouldn't take it seriously either, because it's just not an accurate representation. Or he doesn't give any kind of good arguments for Christianity, and he doesn't give any kind of good arguments against Islam. Same thing with David Wood. David Wood doesn't give any kind of accurate, he doesn't give any kind of good arguments for Christianity, and he doesn't give any kind of good arguments against Islam. But what do you expect? I mean, you're dealing with a psychopath. David Wood's essentially a psychopath. I mean, his own mom put him in a mental hospital for trying to kill his father with a hammer. So, you're not going to get any kind of... And Nabeel Qureshi is just copying him, or he was influenced by him. and he was copying off other Christian critics. So you're not getting any kind of, you're not getting any kind of good arguments for Christianity or against Islam with Nabeel Qureshi and David Wood. It's all appeal to emotion arguments, and it's all fallacious arguments, things like that. So anyway, this is just my brief response to this book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. Maybe in the future I'll go more into details and things like that. It's a very personal book, and it is well written. Don't get me wrong. It's actually an entertaining book, and he cites Ibn. He does attempt to cite Islamic scholarship. For example, he cites Ibn Kathir, but he doesn't quote it correctly. For example, he talks about the Quran chapter 9 verse 29, and then he cites Ibn Kathir. Or wait, what does it say? What does it say about Ibn Kathir? Let me just get into it real quick. He cites Ibn Kathir's book, The Battles of the Prophet, and he talks about the Quran chapter 9 verse 9, Quran chapter 9 verse 29, etc., etc. Then he gives the hadith in Sahih Bukhari where the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "I've been ordered to fight against the people until they testify that there's no God but Allah, Muhammad is his prophet." But what Nabeel Qureshi doesn't tell you is that there's a more, that if you read Sunan al-Nisa, the correct Arabic is, "I've commanded to fight the polytheist." So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is saying, "I've been commanded to fight the polytheist," or the actual Arabic or the actual hadith is saying from al-Nisa is that I've been commanded to fight the polytheist. So he, of course, Nabeel Qureshi doesn't cite the Arabic or anything like that. Why would he? Because it doesn't fit his agenda, or he doesn't cite any kind of hadith commentaries or anything like that. He just cites the hadith without any kind of commentary or anything like that. But anyways, the correct form, the correct wording of that hadith is, "I've been commanded to fight the polytheist until they testify that there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his final prophet." And this is found in Sunan al-Nisa. The reason why the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was commanded to fight the polytheist was because in the final stages of the Prophet Muhammad's life, he was still under attack by the Arab polytheists and stuff like that. So the Quran chapter 9 verse 29 is a long topic. I'm not going to get into it this video, but look at the description box below for the Quran chapter 9 verse 29 for what I say about for the reason why Quran chapter 9 verse 29 was revealed, and why the Quran chapter 9 verse 5 was revealed, and stuff like that. So anyways, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus is an entertaining book, but it's not an informative book. You're not going to get any kind of accurate picture about Islam, and you're not going to get any kind of good arguments for Christianity with this book. It's just entertaining and it's personal, and that's pretty much about it. But when you're influenced by a psychopath like David Wood, of course you're not going to be an honest person, or you're not going to tell the facts. You're not going to be honest with the facts about Islam or the religion you converted to, Christianity. So so that's just my 2 cents about Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. So maybe I'll do like more reviews on like specific chapters of this book, but I'm trying to keep this video as short as possible and just giving like a brief summary of this book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. So that's just my 2 cents. So of course Christians are going to praise this book, and they're going to promote it and advertise it. This book even got the Christian Book Award. So of course Christians are going to advertise and promote this book. Of course they're going to do it. Why not? It's actually it actually supports any kind of it supports anti-Islamic, or it supports Christian Islamophobia to an extent. So of course Christians are going to promote it, because a lot of Christians, they're not really friendly with Islam. They're not pro-Islam to begin with. So any kind of apostate, apostate from Islam to Christianity, of course they're going to heavily promote or advertise his book. It doesn't matter if his book is accurate or inaccurate, or if it's honest or dishonest in its arguments against Islam. If it's an apostate, then they'll give him the praise, attention, and the spotlight that the Christian apostate so desperately seeks. And that's the case with Nabeel Qureshi. Nabeel Qureshi wanted the attention, praise for converting to Christianity, Christianity worked. You know, his book is all over the place, and Barnes and Noble. And I think I found it in Sam's Club too, and stuff like that. So Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus is not a accurate representation of Islam. It's not an accurate critique against Islam, and it's not an accurate book arguing for Christianity. It's not a good Christian apologetic book. So that's just my 2 cents about this book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. You know, so that's just my 2 cents. Thanks. So.